And greetings and welcome to the QCast. This is season 4, episode 29. It's been a great season. We're here in late January with, all kinds of top 25 upsets this week and other huge games. And one of those enormous games was Trine's win at Calvin earlier in the week. And really excited to have Brooks Miller here on the QCast for the first time, the head men's basketball coach of the 17-1 Trine University Thunder. And Brooks, boy, I mean, 17-1, 7-0 in the league. I'm guessing as you started the season and you start to map out kind of how the season might go, could you have thought 17-1, 7-0 at this point, Brooks?
I don't know about that. I think we knew in the offseason we had to put together a much faster, more athletic team that was capable of scoring the ball. And we knew with the core group that we had returning that if we could find the right mixture, that we'd have a chance to win every game we played. I think there's a lot of teams in the country that can say that. And as a coach, you don't look too far ahead. You just focus on your matchup for that upcoming game and the things you got to work on to improve. And I think that's really kind of where our mindset has been since we've been able to get together, starting in September. Thankfully, the NCAA allowed us to have a few earlier days. And I think that was huge for our group, bringing in 3 transfers and a freshman that were going to get into the rotation, along with a core of group of guys that had a lot of success last year at 22-4, and everybody trying to understand new roles and how we could fit together the right way.
You guys are ranked number 7 currently in the D3hoops.com poll. And spoiler alert, that's going to be moving up here very shortly come Monday. Let's talk, Brooks, about that Calvin game. And by the way, before we talk about Calvin, I should have done the research on this and I just didn't have the time. But in the history of the world, in the history of MIAA, how many teams have won at Hope and at Calvin in back-to-back games? Like, do we know an answer to that by chance?
I'm not sure. Our success here the last 5 years at Trine, having won 2 championships and competing for a third one now, we've really kind of taken a piece of every program in our league and looked at how they've been successful. And obviously Hope and Calvin kind of haven't bared the flag for that for the most part of the MIAA's history. So we really look at those programs and think, okay, these are things that they've done well. And Albion too, with Coach Turner and Coach May, and so when you go to those places, you really have to have a deep respect for how difficult it is to compete in those at those venues and come out with a win. And we know we have to be our best. And I think where we're at now with our program and where they've always been, it really brings out the best in all of us. So we have a lot of great players between the 3 programs, and just to get those wins was huge. And I don't know if you know, but Coach Saul recruited me and coached me at Hillsdale College as the assistant. So I played for Coach Daum at the time and won a national championship at Calvin, and even Coach Hargraves at Olivet was on that staff. So we have a lot of familiarity with one another, and it's a great competition between us and Calvin with the relationship Coach Saul and I have, but it's not a lot of fun because we know somebody that we really care about is going to come out on the losing end, but we know that has to happen. But I do think it makes us a lot better.
Such a cool connection with Coach Saul. He was the last guest or 2 guests ago on the QCast, and he was awesome. And there are like in the MIAA, there's so many connections like that. Like we talked about Coach Saul playing against Greg Mitchell in the Hope Calvin rivalries back in the day. And you just mentioned your connection with Coach Saul. There's many, many others that actually, I think it was Zach Snyder that mentioned to me before Coach Saul joined me on the QCast. Just talking about the Calvin game, that was coming into these big conference games like this. I always feel like if you can get a road win in one of these things, whatever conference, any conference in the country, not just an MIA thing, if you can get a road win in the conference against a team that is kind of a contender, I don't know that there's a better kind of win. So coming into the Calvin game, just talk about the sense of like how big a game that felt to you guys, Brooks.
Well, it was pretty significant. We've made a lot of adjustments to our style of play this offseason because of Calvin. They do a lot of different things that would give us problems in the past. We're traditionally a motion offense, which we still are. However, we basically run the motion without the down screen because in the MIAA, they don't really believe in the whole freedom of movement thing off the ball as much as they're supposed to, or they do, which is totally fine. I think it makes you grow as a program and as a team. I think our friend Zach put out a clip the other day of us or Calvin getting called for a foul and our guy kind of throwing the guy's arm off, but Zach kind of omitted the first 3 seconds of it when he was being tackled cutting through the lane. But I give him a hard time about that. But no,
I will. I
it was a great
absolutely will.
basketball game. And I think we have some really unique talent in the MIAA this year. I think Jalen Overway is arguably the greatest offensive player in Division III basketball right now. And I think Emmanuel Megnanglo is the best defensive player in all of Division III basketball right now. So they don't specifically match up against one another during that game, but I think the level of talent during that game was very significant. And I always like to judge a game based on how many assists. You know, I can tell you how well we played on offense based on how many assists we had.
Sure.
And in that game, we had 20 and Calvin had 20. So a game where there was 40 assists that were those plays that were made. I think that's really rare in college basketball. So anybody that wants to watch a great basketball game, go back and see that. And we were fortunate to come out on the winning end of that game. We know that round one in historical terms in the MIAA is the most meaningless win, but it is an important win. You know, round two and round three are the ones that determine where we're headed after that.
Yeah, and in that game, you know, I thought it was interesting in that Overway and Varnado scored 53 points between the two of them, and the rest of the team scored just 18. I don't know. I've seen Overway in person now. I saw him at the Great Lakes Invitational. I watched many games last year. I've watched many games on stream, but seeing him in person, Brooks, he's way bigger than I thought he was. And he's so skilled, and I agree. I think he's the best offensive player I think he's the toughest matchup. So like going into a game with Overway, what are you trying to do exactly are you trying to slow him down? Like, how are you trying to contain him?
Well, we don't make a whole lot of adjustments based on personnel, whether that's unique to coaching or to programs, I'm not sure, but we're very principle based. So we want our guys to play faster and really react more and be the aggressor. So in order to do that, I think you got to have a principled style of defense that allows you to play game in and game out with maybe one adjustment here or there. We're very fortunate to, I think, have the toughest player in all of basketball, Division I, II, or III, and Aidan Smylie. Yeah. There's not one player that I've ever been around in my career as a player or coach that can contribute to winning more than Aidan Smylie does without ever making a shot or even taking a shot. So he does a great job battling post players, trying to stay what we call in the gap between the man and the ball. And then we always try to attack the ball when it goes into the paint, whether it's a post entry or a drive or anything that puts pressure on the paint, we try to attack it. Our philosophy is really 3 terms. It's share the ball on offense, attack the ball on defense, and go get it at both ends. So every time we try to, our guys, when in doubt, fulfill one of those commitments that we try to make to each other. So when it comes to individual adjustments, I think, you know, obviously we're trying to focus on cutting more off the ball and playing with speed, but you can't really play in transitioning with speed if you don't have it. So I think just making sure we're aware of where the ball is, keeping the ball out of the middle. I don't think that's a secret to anybody that we play against. That's a big part of what we do.
Right.
And not a lot of teams do that. So I think when you go into a game against Trine, there are some adjustments you got to make in our conference in 2 days that maybe you haven't been working on all year long. So we try to steal your practice time. And that way we try to stay consistent with what we practice starting in October all the way through the end of February and hope that kind of maybe plays into taking you out of rhythm a little bit. And I felt like maybe we were able to do that on the perimeter with some of their other players. They weren't just easy, direct pressure release passes into the post. We wanted to make those passes really difficult, but it's not a secret because we try to make those passes really difficult no matter who we play.
Love the term steal your practice time. I love that because like the ultimate example of that would be like Grinnell, you know, like you're playing Grinnell and you have to just shut down your practice and work on Grinnell stuff or like Illinois Wesleyan played Redlands this year. I'm pretty sure that they had to just like figure out what to do with Redlands press. That's a great term. In the beginning of that Calvin game, Brooks, I thought like one of the keys was the start. right out of the gates, Fred Garland, who's kind of a combo guard, maybe more of a two guard, lefty, crafty, really pure shooter. He comes out and he knocks down like a 17-footer right off the bat. I think he had 7 points. I think it was 7-0 Fred Garland versus Calvin. And sometimes the way a game starts and seems like it's a big deal to me, like I don't know if he misses that first shot and they come down and hit a three, maybe things play out a little differently, but he looked so good early. And talk about that jolt of energy from the start there.
Well, what really makes this team so unique is we do have a high level of experience with some really fierce competitors. Fred is as competitive as any young man I've ever met and has put in a ton of work. And not only does he have a lot of confidence in himself, but his teammates have a lot of confidence in him. He's an incredible teammate. He shares the ball like no other. He's got 62 assists on the year. He leads us in assists. We're averaging 16 assists as a team, and I think he has a lot to do with that. And when he comes out with an attack mode mentality, it really changes how we do things. And he did the same thing at Hope too. I think he hit 2 or 3 shots in the first maybe 2 or 3 possessions at Hope, and he's really doing it within the confines of what we're trying to do as a team. So that type of mentality, he's a great leader for us. Even though it's his first year, I think he has the respect of his teammates just based on how he approaches winning and how he approaches getting everyone involved and making sure we understand that, hey, this is kind of a special thing we're trying to accomplish. So, having a guy like that and his brother Cortez with the experience we have to go into that building was really unique. And it helps a lot. It does set the tone. What I think separates basketball from any other sport is the mental side. It's not that the mental side is not important in other team sports, but fatigue plays such a significant factor in basketball to make your decisions. And so does what the other team is doing. So many things are out of your control.
Right.
And when you can get things going in the right direction and get that positive mental energy going, that these things are working, and that buy-in of, okay, we're getting a couple really hard back cuts that are either loosening things up at the rim or getting us easy step-in shots. I think that builds confidence. So those type of starts are really valuable, especially in a high-level game like that.
Yeah, it was just a huge win for you. You controlled the game. It got down to 5 points with a minute and a half to go, and I would say both teams kind of played a little bit sloppy in the final minute and a half or so, and you held on. You really did play great in that game. So you have wins over Hope and Calvin, and as you look at the MIAA right now, you're 7-0. Calvin's 6-1, Hope is 5-2. I think this is the point where, and I know coaches probably don't like this term, but we got to say that Trine's a little bit in the driver's seat because you have those road wins right now. But that league, I mean, now you got to face those guys again, right? So talk a little bit about how good the league is this year, especially there at the top. Talk about what the MIAA is going to be like the rest of the way here.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing we have to overcome here moving forward is the mental edge that Calvin and Hope are going to have, and Adrian and everybody else is going to have over us having won the first game. I don't think you can replace hunger. I don't know if it was one of your tweets or somebody else put a tweet, how difficult it is for CNU to come back this year, even though they got everybody back, and try to repeat as champions. And there's no saying they won't repeat as champions at all. It's a great coach, great program, great players. But that edge that everybody has against you, and the fact that you got to find a different chip on your shoulder. When I was at Texas Tech as a graduate assistant, I was real fortunate to build some great relationships. And I remember Coach Beard was always big on find a chip on your shoulder. You got to constantly figure out a way to be the underdog in any game, no matter what your talent level. And I think that's what we have to overcome here moving forward. The year we went 17-1, where we lost to Randolph-Macon in a game that we created for a poll championship, we had almost everybody back. And I remember as a staff thinking, we got to be careful who we add next year because it might ruin the chemistry. The chemistry was what we thought was so special about that group.
Right.
But that was what hurt us, is we didn't add anybody to that group. So I felt coming back, everybody kind of had the same role. Maybe they got a little bit better, but we were almost stagnant to the point that following year where we didn't enjoy wins. There was nothing different to look forward to every day in practice. It was still the same mundane things we had to do to become successful that we did the year before. So I just think this second time around, Adrian is right now, I think, playing the as good as anybody in our conference besides the teams that are, maybe us in Hope and Calvin. And we got to go play them in a neutral site. We get to go play them after the Pistons game in Little Caesars Arena on Sunday. That's the biggest challenge we've had all year long. We just had 2 huge road wins. We got to go play in a neutral site. That's going to be really exciting for everyone against a team that we beat here a week and a half ago, but they're playing better now. And they know that they played us really tough here at our place. So that challenge in itself is really unique. And I think we just we have to capitalize on the maturity of our team and get them to understand that every game is a championship game. We can't afford to make a mistake of the things we can control, because everybody we play against in our conference, Kalamazoo's 500 and had a great non-conference season. Elma puts a lot of different pressure on you. I think they were 7-4 or 6-5 in the non-conference. And Albion's a significant rival of ours that's going to come in here ready to play. And Olivet probably played us as tough as anybody here at home in the beginning of the season. So we're just excited for all that, but we know we have a lot of work to do to get to where we want to go.
Yeah, and that tweet you were referring to was Ryan Scott, who made that point about Christopher Newport, which I've seen that so many times over the years watching Division III, is just the impact of, the team that has the spotlight on them and how much pressure that becomes. And I love the quote, from Coach Beard, is kind of having to find the chip on your shoulder. I think, as a Chicago guy that grew up with Michael Jordan, I think he was the best in the history of the world at creating a chip, right? I mean, he would hear something sort of and make it into something, and he would show up at that game with the biggest chip on his shoulder, whether it was appropriate or not, but he was the best ever at that. And so I love what you said about that. It's really cool. Wanted to ask you a little bit more about your guys. Coach, you talked about Fred Garland, who's averaging 14 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He's a 6'2" junior from Detroit. We talked about what he brings to the table. Talk a little bit though about his brother, Cortez Garland, who's kind of plays the point guard position for you. 16 points, 3 rebounds, 3 assists. Talk about Cortez Garland a little bit.
Yeah, Cortez is a very, very special player, but he's even more as a young man. I don't know if I've ever been around anybody more mature or anybody I trust more with our basketball team, or just with sharing ideas with. I'm in the film room Wednesday morning before the Calvin game, and I'm going over, before we go over shoot around, we want to fine tune. I'm watching practice, and I'm looking at one of the alignments that they run of how we can guard it and how we can keep it simple. And Coach Lindsay and I are going back and forth. And I said, well, let's call Cortez. So we get Cortez on the phone. We show him some clips of what we're looking at. Hey, how about we do it this way? What do you think? And he goes, Coach, I think that's the most simple way to explain it, where we all will be on the same page. That's what we're doing. And having a guy like that on the floor, or just anybody in your life that you can lean on, that you trust, and the fact that we get to coach him has been one of the most rewarding experiences of my life. I think what he's doing for our team, coming in after competing so fiercely against him for 4 years, I think it's great listening to him and Brent Cox interact with each other, because I don't want to call it, it's not a hatred, right? But it's that competitiveness that they had against each other, winning championships. They won one, we won one. They won one, we're in the finals, whatever it was there, those 2 or 3 years back and forth. That now to have him a part of our group and watching our team learn from him and Fred, and then Drew Moore as well, who was at Olivet for a couple years during the COVID season that we've been able to add. It's just been really awesome. And to see Cortez kind of play that alpha role for us, and our guys accept that and embrace that, because he has the ball in his hand, because he has experience. We have 3 champions on this roster, both Emmanuel and Brent, who were here with us in 2021, and Cortez having won the championship, I think, maybe the year before that, maybe it's 2020, I don't remember. So we have a lot of that pedigree, and Cortez really helps keep everybody together. And his mental approach to our team it's been one of, like I said, it's something that we're journaling and charting every day, because this type of stuff just doesn't happen. But I think this is the way the world's working. People can get as upset as they want to about guys jumping teams here and there, or the portal, or at the highest level, guys getting paid to play. You got to make adjustments. and you got to figure out how to work together. I kind of compare it with the team. We read the book Tribal Leadership together collectively, and we each shared a chapter in the preseason. And we talked about getting to stage 5, a bigger purpose of how we can show people that it is possible to play together. It is possible to have 6 double-figure scores on one basketball team right now. And we can only do that with our best players and our leaders leading the way. So it's really been fun, and Cortez is a big part of what we do.
We talked about the Garland brothers who are studs, and let's talk a little bit more about Brent Cox. So 6'6" senior forward from Kendallville, Indiana, 12 points, 6 rebounds, 2 assists. Talk a little bit more about what Brent Cox brings to the team.
Well, Brent Cox has a tremendous story from the minute he walked on campus, what the sacrifices him and his family had to make to provide this opportunity for him to get a college degree, first and foremost, is tremendous. And I'm so thankful for him and his family to trust us in the journey to help him along the way to see it to fruition. He just finished his undergrad in December, and I've never been more proud of a young man to have in our program the things he's had to overcome to do that. So the basketball has always been a bonus. All the success he's had. When he was a sophomore, he shot 40% from 3. He was kind of came out of nowhere really to be a leader in that group with a team with no seniors on it at that time. So it was pretty special to be a part of that and to see what he's doing. And right now on this team, he came back for his 5th year. He said, "Coach, I just want to win. I just want to go to an NCAA tournament." He said, "We've worked so hard to get to that. It was cut short for us in 21. We missed an opportunity in 22 or 23 last year, being 22-4. He goes, I'll do anything we got to do." And we're at Hope the other day. He took 2 shots at Hope. This is a guy that's a 2-time first-team All MIAA player, was plenty fine with playing 17 minutes, taking 2 shot attempts, but however, had 11 rebounds and made some plays around the basket defensively that he wouldn't have made 2 and 3 seasons ago. So he just, everybody on this team is a leader. We have 13 leaders in this program, and they all do it in a different way. And it's been really cool to see Brent adjust that leadership role, still being one of our captains, but really contribute to our success.
You talked about Aidan Smylie and kind of what he brings on so many fronts. He's a 6'5" junior, 11.7 rebounds, 2 assists. Got to talk about Emmanuel Megnanglo, who is just a special player at this level, a 6'6" senior forward from Benin Republic in Cotonou. I hope I'm saying that right.
Yeah, Cotonou, Benin. Yep,
Benin Republic. So tell me first, like how do you find him? How do you recruit him? What's the story of him getting your program? Because he is just an unbelievably special player.
Well, Emmanuel was out at a very small prep school. He came over. He was a part of the MBA program that travels. They did a camp, and long story short, he ended up at Amelia Academy in Virginia. Well, the academy got shut down during COVID, and he really had nowhere to go because I don't think he could fly back home. And he ended up in a church foundation in Dallas, Texas, right where you are. And
I should have gotten on this, kid.
And the head of the foundation, the Dream Vision Foundation, was the brother-in-law to our international director of admissions. So they were trying to find an opportunity and a place for him to stay and a place to go to school. Now, he also wanted to find an engineering school. Emmanuel is a computer science engineering major, an unbelievably bright young man. He was the defensive player of the year in our conference as a freshman the year we won it. And his story is really remarkable. He's been over here now since 2021 or summer 2020. He lost his father his father had a stroke, and he lost his father in late October of his sophomore year. And it was really tough because he couldn't go back home to the funeral because it takes so long to get back to where he was. He would have missed so much school, and it was a financial burden that he couldn't handle at the time. So he's had a lot to overcome and a lot of challenges. And I think our community here has really embraced him. But Emmanuel's another guy that, he works 20 hours a week in the cafeteria. He comes here to practice, goes from the cafeteria to school to practice to be the best basketball player he can be. Last year, he tore his knee, or he sprained his ligament in his knee at the Albion game the first week of January, when he was absolutely dominating defensively. I think he had 9 blocks in a game at the Great Lakes Invitational Tournament. He didn't practice. He'd practice maybe once a week and then play the 2 games. Our trainer said 95 to 99% of the players across the country would sit out 8 weeks for this injury. But he is kind of freakishly athletic and healthy to where his body heals a little bit better and quicker than some of the other guys that he's seen. So he finished the year last year as best he could. And this year he's really taken off, and he was averaging almost 4.5 blocks and 3 steals a game. And then over Thanksgiving, he's separating 2 frozen hamburgers, and he stabs himself with a knife, and he severs the tendon to his left ring finger. And most of us would have said, hey, just cut the finger off. We're playing incredibly well. He had 17 rebounds, 15 points, and 5 blocks at Heidelberg in a game we had to have. He was really coming into his own. But again, we're about more than that. Plus, again, computer engineering. His digits are a little more important than mine. What I needed when I was his age. So he sat out. He's able to recover very quickly from that surgery. He had the surgery. He's been playing with a club on his left hand for the last, I don't know, 7 or 8 games, and his minutes have been restricted. So his numbers are really low compared, but he's still averaging, I think, almost 4 blocks a game.
Right.
But he has an impact on the game that's really tremendous, but it's more his spirit, the way he communicates. He speaks 4 or 5 languages. But I mean, that on the floor, he's such a bright defender that everybody is always in the right spot because of him. And I know there's been a lot of good defenders that can maybe shut one guy down, lock down guys that can take this guy out of the game. But Emmanuel changes the game for all 5 guys that come into the game on the other team. I can't tell you how many clips I got of guys that have wide open layups that decide to dribble out the other side and they settle for a 17-foot jump shot. Or late in the game, they get maybe a good look, a high percentage shot that they kind of short arm around the basket. You know, you talked about the Calvin game, about the last couple minutes were a little sloppy. Well, that was an absolute war by both teams. Both teams played so hard and put so much pressure on each other that at the end, there was a lot of basically simple plays that could have been made by both teams, but they just weren't because we wore each other down so much. And guys like Emmanuel have a huge impact in that area that don't fit a stat sheet. He's the only guy right now that we have not averaging double figures, but he's probably the best paint scorer we have. Maybe, besides Overway, probably the best in the conference.
One other guy to ask you about is a guy that comes off the bench, but is really one of your key guys, 20 minutes a game for Drew Moore, who's averaging 9 points, 2 rebounds a game. Seems like he really plays a key role for you. Brooks, talk about Drew Moore.
Yeah, I don't know if we keep the stat of points per minute, but he can really score. I think next year he's going to be an elite scorer, being year 2 in our program. Our goal for him next year is to be a guy that's in the top 5 in the league in scoring. And that, to me, that's not selfish. That's his role. His job is to come in and really bring the energy that he brings and attack the basket. He's shooting the ball extremely well from the perimeter, but his defense leads the offense. I think he played like 12 or 13 minutes the other night, had 2 assists, 3 steals, was incredible on the road. Again, another experienced guy. What's really unique about our team, both Cortez and Drew didn't play last year. They were just out there. They weren't on any teams, weren't a part of any programs. So to bring those guys in, I think our ceiling is still really, really high because they're just getting their feet under them and really starting to play, consistently now a little bit even, but they keep getting better and better. Nate Tucker too is in a similar role as Drew. Nate's really come on here for the conference season for us, averaging double figures. He had 20 points at Hope, but he's an elite passer. Again, I'll go back to the assists, but what really is different about this team than any other team we've coached, we can put 5 to 8 great passers on the floor at any one time. So all the cuts that we're making, the energy we're spending trying to put pressure on the paint with our cutting, we can find guys that are open. And I've always felt guys that can pass can be coached, because if you can pass, you can anticipate what's going on, which makes you probably a pretty good defender too from a team standpoint. So defensively, a lot of our numbers have to do with the IQ. I would say in recruiting, if we could pick one thing that really sticks, that you can be consistent with the guys that you try to find, are guys that really know how to pass, because they really usually know how to play and they can be coached. And if they can be coached, then they can get better.
Talk a little bit, Brooks. I'm curious about the region you play in, Region 7. Do you follow along the stuff about potential regional rankings? I ask because the region you're in is loaded. It's the best region, right? So you got John Carroll, you guys, Case Western Reserve, Kelvin. We could keep going down the list, like
Yeah.
the Mount Unions and Mariettas, and there's a teams we're not even getting to. But do you pay attention to like the regional picture and stuff there?
Not a whole lot, but I will tell you, we're learning a lot from different programs. I think the last 2 years we've played, actually the last 3 years, we've played more WIAC schools. And I've just been fascinated with the consistency of those schools and how they do things up there. And, a lot of those guys try to force the middle defensively and attack you in different ways. Offensively, they're really big and physical. Their style of plays are really unique. So I think that's where I kind of follow the regions. We've always played the OAC schools quite a bit and the
Right.
HCAC schools, going back and forth. And I've built some relationships with some great coaches over there, Coach Fewline in particular at Mount Union, and Coach Buhai at Heidelberg. And I share a lot of ideas and thoughts with them. I just really think in the situation we're in, we learned a lot from COVID here. We were really fortunate. We got incredible leadership. I played at Hillsdale College and extremely proud of my degree from Hillsdale College for many, many reasons. I think the leadership here at Trine is very similar to that. And what we learned at COVID was really embrace what you're doing in the moment and enjoy that and appreciate it. And I think that was the time where, we weren't following other box scores or other teams as much. And I really enjoyed that, really locking into our team and our guys.
Sure.
So we're really focused right now on what we have to do to just win the next game. And occasionally you look, hey, how did Heidelberg do against Marietta? Or how did so-and-so do? And then we'll turn to each other and go, who cares? It doesn't matter. We got Adrian here on Sunday. Let's just beat Adrian and all that stuff will take care of itself. But I think being an Ohio guy, I grew up in Northwest Ohio, and my coaches were all Division III players and NAI small college players. And I've learned a lot from those guys. And I just really, and having lived in Texas, coaching as a GA at Texas Tech under Coach Knight, and then one of the best mentors I've ever been around was Steve Green at South Plains College,
Yeah.
where one of your buddies, Cliff Carroll, and I really got to know each
Yeah.
other really well. I've learned so much from Steve about how to manage a team and a program than anybody that you could imagine, and the value of recruiting. But I think the Midwest is really unique. Look at Illinois, Michigan, Indiana, Ohio. Sports are really, really valued here as a part of our culture. And I'm not saying they're not in Texas, because I know how football is and all that. But I know if you go to a high school, you can go to a Division IV, which would be the smallest level of high school basketball in the state of Ohio. You can walk into a gym that sits 1,200 people, and there'll be almost 1,000 people there, no matter what the talent level is. It's a really unique environment. It's a big part of who we are. I think our country as a nation, it values competition and through sports and how it thrives in making your family successful, your business successful, or education. It's a huge part of education, and education breaks all barriers. I don't care what you look like, where you're from, or what you do. The locker room separates the team guys and the selfish guys. The only people that stand out in the locker room are selfish individuals. And I think that type of culture, what you get from team sports, is what makes our country so great. We're able to recognize, okay, success becomes from preparation. Success comes from commitment. Success comes from being able to look in the mirror and say, you know what, we're not very good at that. This is where we got to improve. I either need to avoid it or work really hard at it.
Right.
So when you talk about the other schools in the region, it's a great region. We have a lot of respect for them. We focus a lot more on them when we play them. But really, we kind of let that stuff shake out and focus on our team more than anything else.
Yeah, that makes sense, especially in Region 7, where you can't really control. All you can control is how you guys play
Absolutely.
game to game, because the rest of that region is just nuts. Just another couple questions, and I'll let you go, Brooks. Is the Elmhurst game, that's your only loss? Everyone keeps telling me how terrible the CCIW is this year. I think there's some really good teams. I think Illinois Wesleyan's outstanding. I think Elmhurst is outstanding. Talk a little bit. I know you didn't have your big guy Megnanglo in that game. I believe he missed that game. But talk about the matchup at Elmhurst.
Yeah, he did miss that game, but either way, I mean, everybody goes through something and has to overcome it. I think Coach Baines and that squad, they're such a physical team. They did a great job attacking the rim on us in the second half, and we didn't have much of an answer. They out-rebounded us. I thought we made a lot of shots early in that game. I think we had a 10-point lead at the half, but we just could not keep them out of the paint and making plays. And Ocean Johnson, they have a ton of experience too.
Yeah.
They came in, they have a lot of depth. we were able to watch Illinois Wesleyan. I followed what you put with Coach Rose. I love listening to Coach Rose's post-game thoughts. I think he has such a great message, and you can tell what an incredible leader he is. And that was one of the first times I've ever got to watch them on film. Was they played Elmhurst before we
That's
did,
right.
and what a defensive group they have in a tough. That game was really interesting because that game could have went either way. I remember looking at the score and then watching the game and thinking, I looked at the score first because I had the box score in my hand, and I'm like, when does this start to get different? Like when do they start to separate?
Yeah,
Because
6 minutes to
it
go,
was
right?
holy cow, it was back and forth, and we watched a lot of Carthage this year too. So the CCIW, incredible basketball. I don't care what their non-conference records were. It does, when you lose, you can't be as great as they were last year and have been in the past without going through a time where you don't have as many upperclassmen. So
Right.
you got to figure some things out differently. And I know there's been some coaching changes over there recently. So it's a great conference. We have a ton of respect for that region and the things that they do. But yeah, Elmhurst, Coach Baines really it was a well-coached team and so disciplined in who they were that that's going to be a great run down the stretch between them and Illinois Wesleyan and Carthage. And then you just can't, don't go to North Park and think you're going to go get a win.
No.
Even teams like at the bottom half of the conference, Milliken, and the history that Wheaton has, it's conference play, road wins. You got to be excited to get them no matter who they're against.
It's a great point because like Illinois Wesleyan's 9-1 in the league right now. They needed almost a buzzer beater to beat Wheaton at Wheat last week. Like that's just how conference games go, and then they had a heck of a time 2 days ago trying to beat Wheaton at home. They were down 13 in the first half, and it's just that when you look at conference games and you know that from your league, it's like you go on the road. You've got Adrian Sunday in this weird environment at Little Caesars Arena, and like that's going to be a grind of a game. It doesn't matter what your record is or what you're ranked. It just doesn't matter at all.
Well, think about how many times Coach Schauer and Coach Rose have probably competed against each other.
Right.
There's no secrets there.
No.
We all have an identity, no matter what we're doing. And whenever you got to play the second time around is always significantly different because you can look at the film, you can make adjustments, and that have a significant advantage. I know a lot of coaches that I've talked to, whether it's high school coaches, they don't really, sometimes they maybe say some negative things about the NBA. I think the NBA coaching is amazing. The fact that those guys know the difference between where a guy is successful from, let's say, 14 feet versus 16 feet away from the basket when he catches the ball, different adjustments that they make. And I think when you're talking about high level play and great conferences like the CCIW, the MIAA, or the OAC, I think you're talking about coaches that have so much familiarity with one another in the programs that, okay, this is what we have to do to beat them. We know this is what we have to do. And when you're playing non-conference games and you take one shot at somebody, then it's kind of who played well that day. Or I think one of the most consistent factors right now is who shoots the three well, who's defending the three really well, and who's making those shots. That can determine a lot. But when you get into that second round and then you get into the tournament, it's an absolute war and anything can happen.
Great points. And also, I can't let you go without asking about playing or coaching with Coach Knight. Yesterday I tweeted out that you were coming on the QCast, which I was excited about. And about a minute later, Cliff Carroll had a DM and it said, "So glad that you're having my guy on." He was there under Coach Knight. I think maybe you came in right after Cliff left. And I have a unique appreciation for Coach Knight because a really good friend of mine who I had on the QCast played for Coach Knight in Indiana. Brian Evans was the Big Ten Player of the Year. And I had Brian on the show, and I believe that like the perception of Coach Knight is one thing. And then when you talk to people that have played or coached with him or whatever, it's another. Talk about like the Bobby Knight that you were around.
Yeah, Cliff and I missed each other both at Texas Tech by 1 year and at South Plains by 1 year, but we did float a lot of rivers together. So the one thing I'll tell you,
which is a thing in Texas. It's a thing.
Oh, it's an incredible thing. But the thing with Coach, I got a chance. I can't talk about Coach without talking about Pat. Pat really created that opportunity for me after working with Coach Dalma. Him and Coach Dalma had a relationship, and they helped me get down there. But one thing people don't talk about with Coach was hilarious. He was so funny, but you had to be careful. Like, you couldn't just laugh at what he was saying based on what was happening. Coach could keep you. Coach brought the best out of everybody. His presence was so unique. I don't think that's something you can never duplicate. When he walked into practice, the GAs made sure our passes hit the players right in the chest every time. We were bringing enthusiasm. When he walked in the office at that time, when I was there, cell phones were just starting to get big. You made sure you had your cell phone on vibrate, or you had it off in your locker. You didn't have it anywhere around. When you were in a meeting as the GA, I was fortunate to, I'd meet with Coach about once every couple of weeks, and that was before you had player development directors and all that stuff. So one of my jobs was the player development director with the other GA, Aidan Smylie, who I'm really close with still even to this day. And we'd meet with Coach and we would talk about, okay, what does this guy need to do? This guy need to do. And some of the film sessions I was able to get called into when he'd say, "Come on in here, boy, why don't you try and learn something? But keep your mouth shut." Yes, sir, will do. But it was a great experience. And the thing I took out of it as a coach more than anything else was, don't complicate winning. Use the shot fake. Use the pass fake. Things that give you an advantage. If all talent, everything being equal, how do you win games? The best play in basketball is 1-on-0. So how do we get to 1-on-0? Well, you got to defend first. And how do we defend? You got to defend collectively. The ability to communicate, setting up your cuts, sprinting to screen, finishing your cuts. I think that's really what it was. And then getting people to share the ball and just do things together, I thought was really remarkable. And the people I got to meet being with Coach, the individuals we were associated with, guys that would come visit with him that I could pick their brains, guys on our staff like Coach Beard, who I was basically Coach Beard's assistant during my time there. I handled all the on-campus recruiting with him, getting guys to where they wanted to go. But Coach set the tone and the culture that everything mattered. Everything you said to one another made a difference. But everything was simple. I told a story. I'll leave you with this. There's a lot of great Coach Knight stories, but we're playing at Oklahoma. And they got Blake Griffin. It was Blake Griffin's year at Oklahoma, and they were really good. I think they went to the Elite Eight. And me and the other GA, Almir, got to sit right behind Pat and Coach on the bench, so we could hear some of the adjustments he would make. And him and I would kind of write things. Coach was big on journals and note cards, so we always had note cards. We'd write things down even before they'd happen and kind of match them up with what Coach would say. I've always felt the most important thing a head coach can do during a game is have the right people on the floor at the right time. It's not about making adjustments at halftime. Maybe it's emphasizing one thing over the other. It's not about drawing up plays in the huddle. These guys that get this credit for after timeout stuff blows me away. I mean, out of a baseline, out of bounds, hell, you might score anyway if you just throw it across half court and bring it in. But that's neither here nor there. But there was one time we're playing Oklahoma. It's a 2-point game, probably with about 2.5, 3 minutes to go. And they're significantly more talented than we are. Most teams were that year. And he drew up a play for Martin Zeno, not drew up a play, but emphasized, this is our entry. We run Trine. We're going to try to get Martin the ball on the baseline and get him isolated on the baseline for a catch and rip drive. So it was really more of an entry than a play. And we get the ball there. We get a great look. We miss the shot. They go down, get a 3 in transition. We come down, turn it over. And then they get a dunk, and basically the game was over. But I remember after Martin missed the shot, Coach turned to Pat so calmly and said, we couldn't have got a better look in that possession at the time when we needed it. And that was it. And we shook hands and moved into the locker room. We talked about getting on the plane and then coming back, and we worked on what we had to do to get better. So Coach was he was very stoic. I think at the times what he did not like was the same mistake twice. And the fact that people that did not want to win as bad as he wanted to win. Sure. And that wasn't just players, and it wasn't coaches. It was administration. It was fan bases. I think those were the things that would frustrate Coach, that, listen, winning brings special experience for everybody, the university, the players, the community. Everybody benefits from winning. The winning is what matters. And if we don't win, we don't get to have the platform to impact the lives that we impact in the way we do.
Yeah, that's great stuff. Great perspective. I think people will really appreciate hearing you talk about Coach Knight. One more question for me, and then I'll ask what final thoughts you have. Just final question about, Division III. You played at both the D1, so you played at Toledo, and then you played at Hillsdale. You played D1, you played D2. You've coached at many different levels. And you've been at Trine in Division III. This is your 13th season at Trine. You have built one of the top programs in Division III. I'm just curious, Brooks, your perspective, that we always have fun with the YD3 hashtag. What's your YD3? Why do you love this level?
Well, I don't know if I love the level as much any more than I do the other levels. I just feel like as a head coach, I was fortunate as a player to have some great mentors in my life, especially after I lost my dad, to have Coach Dowm at Hillsdale when I needed him. Coach Joplin at Toledo, I was a walk-on, so I was kind of an afterthought a lot of ways. I kind of needed that experience in my life. With Coach Dalma, I don't want to say the whipping boy, but I had to learn how to do it Coach's way. And Coach Saul was a big part of me developing that. And now as a coach, I just am so appreciative of what those men brought to me in my life when I needed it at that time, that I think I found a place here at Trine where I have that platform to assist these guys in their journey. My wife is in administration here. We love what Trine stands for and what we believe in here, what our values are, how we believe in the student first. We don't have this huge $1 billion endowment like some of these other schools. We invest in the individual. And basketball has taught me so many things and made me, I think, a father that is respected by his kids. I'd like to think so. They're 10 and 7, but I think we get some good things done. I have a tremendous wife. I love my family. And I think the things that we're able to accomplish and the commitment we have here to Trine, what I believe in, as a head coach, you get to do that and you get to share those experiences with these young men that it's a tough time. 18 to 22 to 23 years old, it can be scary. And I don't think it's getting any easier for kids coming out of college with the way the world works and the attention you get for every little thing you do. So to be able to guide them in that journey has been very, very enjoyable for me. So whether I'm here at Trine or at Hillsdale or whatever the future may bring, we're just trying to enjoy the moment and help prepare these guys to be successful. And we fortunately get to use basketball. I get to come to one of the best arenas in all of Division III, all of small college, period. Our athletic director is all about winning and what we need to be successful in basketball and all the sports across the board. We won a national championship in softball. So I think why D3? D3 is great. I will tell you, D3 is probably the last place we have where you can build a program. I mean, even outside of high school, hell, you got kids in hye school leaving left and right to go to the next thing. Right. I could never imagine leaving my high school coach, Jerry Kiefer, because I thought something, I couldn't imagine that. But in D3, we can build a program here. And I think the success we've had, and I appreciate you saying what you said about being one of the top programs, we have not had an individual transfer from our program that's been in our rotation in 5 seasons. So everybody that's been in our rotation in the last 5 years has stayed, which has kept us old. And I think that really makes it significant. We've been able to add the right pieces from the transfer side of things. And we have a freshman right now in Jace Cusack that's going to be a great player. He'll be the next guy on our wall someday. So we just got to really maintain that culture of just keep building and appreciate what you have in the moment.
Well, I really appreciate your time, Brooks. And, I mentioned you're ranked number 7 and, it's not my fault, coach, because I had you number 2. Hampton City 1, Trine 2. So I think you're going to see everyone floating up my direction here really soon. In all seriousness, though, this has been awesome. And I think people will listen to this and not have any surprise that Trine has become such a powerhouse program after listening to you speak. What are your final thoughts? You've got Trine Nation tuning in. You got D3 Nation. Who else tuning in? What are your final thoughts here on the QCast?
Well, I just think, the players make the program so special and unique. And I think as coaches, sometimes we can get carried away with how we do things, X's and O's wise. And I can tell you from experience, it's just great to be a part of their journey and assist them any way we can. And I'm just happy that the guys that we have in our program right now have experienced the success we have so far, but it doesn't change what we have to do today at practice. We still got to make good decisions. We got to come here with the right mindset. And we are so proud as a program, as our players and our staff, to represent Trine University, because Trine University is a unique, special place. And I'm not saying that it's some type of marketing tool, because you have such a great platform. And we're so thankful for things that you and Avika and Zach and and Ryan do for all of Division III, but Trine is really unique. And whether you played sports or not, we have a great opportunity for you here as an education. But just the environment and the community led by now Dr. Shannon, that was started with Dr. Brooks. So we're thankful for you guys recognizing us here in your QCast, and hopefully we'll be ranked at the top at the end of March as opposed to right now. Right now is nice, but the end of March will be much better.
And special thanks to you. I know that your wife is in Florida on Trine business. You're a single dad, 2 kids. We didn't know if the QCast would start at this time or that time today, so we were very fluid and flexible. And I'm glad this worked. I know how busy you are juggling things there at home, there, Brooks.
Well, thanks. Well, I got a lot of great help from my mother-in-law Margaret and my mom Leanne, who they're a big part of our success too. Because as you know, no matter what you do at the office or what you're a part of outside of the family, it's the family that makes it go. And very lucky there.
Folks, that was Brooks Miller, who's the head men's basketball coach of the 17-1, 7-0 Trine University Thunder. They're rolling. If you haven't had a chance to check them out, give them a look. They have one of the best arenas in Division III. They have a uniquely talented, balanced team that plays really well together. So check out Trine. Brooks, this has been a ton of fun, man, and I'll be rooting for you. Have a great rest of the season.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having us.